Funding for this program is provided by. Additional funding provided by.
This is a course about justice, and we begin with a story. Suppose you're the driver of a trolley car, and your trolley car is hurtling down the track at 60 miles an hour. And at the end of the track, you notice 5 workers working on the track. You try to stop, but you can't. Your brakes don't work. You feel desperate because you know that if you crash into these 5 workers, they will all die. Let's assume you know that for sure. And so you feel helpless until you notice that there is, off to the right, a side track. And at the end of that track, there's 1 worker working on the track. Your steering wheel works, so you can turn the trolley car, if you want to, onto the side track, killing the 1, but sparing the 5. Here's our first question. What's the right thing to do? What would you do? Let's take a poll. How many would turn the trolley car onto the side track? Raise your hands. How many wouldn't? How many would go straight ahead? Keep your hands up, those of you who would go straight ahead. A handful of people would. The vast majority would turn. Let's hear first. Now we need to begin to investigate the reasons why you think it's the right thing to do. Let's begin with those in the majority who would turn to go onto the side track. Why would you do it? What would be your reason? Who's willing to volunteer a reason? Go ahead, stand up.
Because it can't be right to kill 5 people when you can only kill 1 person instead.
It wouldn't be right to kill 5 if you could kill 1 person instead. That's a good reason. That's a good reason. Who else? Does everybody agree with that reason? Go ahead.
Well, I was thinking it was the same reason on 9/11 with regard to people who flew the plane into the Pennsylvania field as heroes because they chose to kill the people in the plane and not kill more people in big buildings.
So the principle there was the same on 9/11. It's a tragic circumstance, but better to kill 1 and so that 5 can live. Is that the reason most of you had, those of you who would turn? Yes? Let's hear now from those in the minority, those who wouldn't turn. Yes?
Well, I think that's the same type of mentality that justifies genocide and totalitarianism. In order to save one type of race, you wipe out the other.
So what would you do in this case? You would, to avoid the horrors of genocide, you would crash into the 5 and kill them?
Presumably, yes.
You would?
Yeah.
Okay, who else? It's a brave answer. Thank you. Let's consider another trolley car case and see whether those of you in the majority want to adhere to the principle, better that 1 should die so that 5 should live. This time you're not the driver of the trolley car, you're an onlooker. You're standing on a bridge overlooking a trolley car track. And down the track comes a trolley car. At the end of the track are 5 workers. The brakes don't work. The trolley car is about to careen into the 5 and kill them. And now, you're not the driver. You really feel helpless until you notice standing next to you, leaning over the bridge, is a very fat man. And you could give him a shove. He would fall over the bridge, onto the track, right in the way of the trolley car. He would die, but he would spare the 5. Now, how many would push the fat man over the bridge? Raise your hand. How many wouldn't? Most people wouldn't. Here's the obvious question. What became of the principle? Better to save 5 lives even if it means sacrificing 1. What became of the principle that almost everyone endorsed in the first case? I need to hear from someone who was in the majority in both cases. How do you explain the difference between the two? Yes?
The second one, I guess, involves an active choice of pushing the person down, which I guess that person himself would otherwise not have been involved in this situation at all. And so to choose on his behalf, I guess, to involve him in something that he otherwise would have escaped is, I guess, more than what you have in the first case, where the 3 parties, the driver and the 2 sets of workers, are already, I guess, in the situation.
But the guy working, the one on the track off to the side, he didn't choose to sacrifice his life any more than the fat man did he?
That's true, but he was on the tracks, and you...
This guy was on the bridge. Go ahead, you can come back if you want. All right, it's a hard question. You did well, you did very well. It's a hard question. Who else can find a way of reconciling the reaction of the majority in these 2 cases? Yes?
Well, I guess in the first case, where you have the 1 worker and the 5, it's choice between those 2, then you have to make a certain choice, and people are going to die because of the trolley car, not necessarily because of your direct actions. The trolley car is a runaway thing, and you're making a split-second choice, whereas pushing the fat man over is an actual act of murder on your part. You have control over that, whereas you may not have control over the trolley car. So I think it's a slightly different situation.
All right, who has a reply? No, that's good. Who has a way? Who wants to reply? Is that a way out of this?
I don't think that's a very good reason, because you choose to, it's either way you have to choose who dies, because you either choose to turn and kill the person, which is an active conscious thought to turn, or you choose to push the fat man over, which is also an active conscious action. So either way you're making a choice.
Do you want to reply?
Well, I'm not really sure that that's the case. It just still seems kind of different, the act of actually pushing someone over onto the tracks and killing him. You are actually killing him yourself.
You're pushing him with your own hands.
You're pushing him. And that's different than steering something that is going to cause death into another. You know, it doesn't really sound right saying it now.
No, it's good.
I'm up here.
It's good. What's your name?
Andrew.
Andrew, let me ask you this question, Andrew.
Yes.
Suppose, standing on the bridge next to the fat man, I didn't have to push him. Suppose he were standing over a trap door that I could open by turning a steering wheel like that. Would you turn?
For some reason, that still just seems more wrong.
Right?
I mean, maybe if you accidentally like leaned into the steering wheel or something like that. But or say that the car is hurtling towards a switch that will drop the trap. Then I could agree with that.
Fair enough. It still seems wrong in a way that it doesn't seem wrong in the first case to turn, you say.
And in another way, I mean, in the first situation, you're involved directly with the situation. In the second one, you're an onlooker as well.
All right.
So you have the choice of becoming involved or not by pushing the fat man.
Let's forget for the moment about this case. That's good. Let's imagine a different case. This time you're a doctor in an emergency room, and 6 patients come to you. They've been in a terrible trolley car wreck. 5 of them sustained moderate injuries. 1 is severely injured. You could spend all day caring for the 1 severely injured victim. But in that time, the 5 would die. Or you could look after the 5, restore them to health, but during that time, the 1 severely injured person would die. How many would save the 5? Now is the doctor. How many would save the 1? Very few people. Just a handful of people. Same reason, I assume. 1 life versus 5? Now consider another doctor case. This time you're a transplant surgeon, and you have 5 patients, each in desperate need of an organ transplant in order to survive. 1 needs a heart, 1 a lung, 1 a kidney, 1 a liver, and the 5th, a pancreas. And you have no organ donors. You are about to see them die. And then it occurs to you that in the next room, there's a healthy guy who came in for a checkup. And he's, you like that? And he's taking a nap. You could go in very quietly, yank out the 5 organs, that person would die, but you could save the 5. How many would do it? Anyone? How many? Put your hands up if you would do it. Anyone in the balcony? You would? Be careful, don't lean over too much. What? How many wouldn't? All right, what do you say? Speak up in the balcony, you who would yank out the organs. Why?
I'd actually like to explore a slightly alternate possibility of just taking the 1 of the 5 who needs an organ who dies first, using their 4 healthy organs to save the other 4.
That's a pretty good idea. That's a great idea, except for the fact that you just wrecked the philosophical point. So let's step back from these stories and these arguments to notice a couple of things about the way the arguments have begun to unfold. Certain moral principles have already begun to emerge from the discussions we've had. And let's consider what those moral principles look like. The first moral principle that emerged in the discussion said the right thing to do, the moral thing to do, depends on the consequences that will result from your action. At the end of the day, better that 5 should live, even if 1 must die. That's an example of consequentialist moral reasoning. Consequentialist moral reasoning locates morality in the consequences of an act, in the state of the world that will result from the thing you do. But then we went a little further, we considered those other cases, and people weren't so sure about consequentialist moral reasoning. When people hesitated to push the fat man over the bridge, or to yank out the organs of the innocent patient, people gestured toward reasons having to do with the intrinsic quality of the act itself. Consequences be what they may. People were reluctant. People thought it was just wrong, categorically wrong, to kill a person, an innocent person, even for the sake of saving 5 lives. At least people thought that in the second version of each story we considered. So this points